if we think this through. Okay, I'll just give a quick introduction. We're just walking through our storyboard template that we're pulling together, and John is going to lead us through an exercise of trying to come up with some of like the messages that we would actually use based on the framework that we're building.
So in doing this, we're starting, or at least we're thinking about this arc, and the arc of the story is really described on this in this sheet. And in simple terms, just so we kind of structure it, we're thinking about the journey of a story where a character who has a problem, and the character is the customer, they're the hero, and the guide, that's us, we're going to teach them how to solve the problem they're facing. And they're facing several problems, but their problem, they're going to have to build a plan, and then they're going to have to achieve success. So as their guide, we play the role up here, they play the role down here, and we need to help them with content to help them go to do this. This came out of the Donald Miller's story brand framework. So there's a reference to it here, but the rest of it's here. But problem, plan, and success is really kind of the high level structure of this. And this is work in progress, MVC of it. But if you think about then the different stages of the buyer's journey, the customer's on a journey too. They're on a journey of trying to understand their problem and solution. Then they're going to evaluate different options to solve the problem. And then they're going to try to select their chosen solution, which maps to awareness, consideration, and purchase. It also, just while we're at it, is related to how Gartner has defined the customer's journey in a recent ebook, which is listed here. It's in Google Drive as well. You can search and find it. But box one in problem awareness is that we have to help them understand that they actually have a problem and the problem can be solved. And then, the next part of this conversation of the message is to showcase to them how other people, that in fact, this is a solution that's in reach, that they don't have to live with it, that there is actual real value if they're able to overcome this problem. And now we want to show them the way forward of what are the tools and processes that they can take action on moving forward to solve this problem. All of it helping to answer the why solve this. So let's go back to the spreadsheet and let's try to walk through this and apply and put this into practice. So if we're thinking about, and we need to think about from a focused persona. Erica, who should we talk about from a persona perspective?
So on the other side of this, I have Devon, the DevOps engineer. We could stick with him or them.
All right. So if we're talking to the DevOps engineer, be helpful if I could type. Put my fingers in the right place. So if we think about the DevOps engineer, and we understand, if we think about the pain and the challenges they're facing of having, of what their situation is, the message we want to communicate is that this is a message about how they can be more efficient and effective, that they don't have to waste, they don't have to be overwhelmed supporting complex Frankenstein like tools and integrations. Right.
I just want to pause here and emphasize what you just wrote. They don't have to be overwhelmed by supporting complex Frankenstein-like tools and integrations. I think in the past, when we've done this, we've written from the GitLab perspective of like, here's the thing we want to tell them about GitLab, and what we're doing here is very different. And you just showed that of we're actually speaking the customers or the user's language of like, what is their fear? What is their motivation in writing that down? So I just want to emphasize that because I think it's an evolution of how we've done this in the past.
Thank you. And I think we should build out the problem statement as to what is the problem they're experiencing. But remember, we're in this first box where the messaging we're trying to get to in this first part of the conversation with them is we want to connect with them and say, look, there is a solution to this. And the solution, you know, as I see, and this is where we need to start to talk about how, and we're not selling GitLab. This is not a sell GitLab box. This is a sell them on the fact that they don't have to be in this situation. We could talk about how Gartner, you know, describes a solution. And frankly, that could be the offer too. This could be an offer where we're going to offer them the VSDP Gartner report, which is a description of what does it take to solve the problem. We could talk about how we could have a piece of content that describes, or messaging that describes the ease of the challenges with auditing and compliance. We could talk about the challenges with consistent metrics and value stream. Right. All of this is getting to the idea of people who are trying, we have to start to anticipate what are they looking for as they start to research this problem. Because remember, this is helping people understand, do I have a problem? And this is our opportunity to start an intervention of yes, you have a problem. Let's talk about the problem.
Right. And then if you're moving into the next stage of awareness, again, still in awareness, still not really talking about GitLab, but talking about here's how you can start, like, here's your plan to start figuring out how to solve the problem addressed in the first box.
That's right. And it may or may not be a GitLab centric answer. I mean, frankly, it could be even more valuable if we had an answer of somebody who solved this with, you know, in different ways. I mean, it frankly could build our credibility if we had answers that weren't just, well, they bought GitLab and it all was better.
Well, and for this use case we're talking about, I think this is where this DevOps platform education material comes in, now that we have a term for it. That's kind of our...
about people who've adopted, yeah.
Yeah.
And so then we would probably have here, again, we're putting this all into practice kind of in real time. And then the next one, so I'm just kind of moving on. I want to get to this next box so we can kind of fill out this whole row.
Sure.
This would be the guide to simplify and I don't know. I'm just to simplify. It's Friday.
I know what you're saying here. I actually just had an idea for content where, yeah, no, go ahead.
It's a guide. It's almost like there's a checklist of,
yeah. If we could position someone like Devon with our content to build a plan that he could propose, so like think about something like that. Like, we just gave you all the materials you need to build your internal business proposal.
That's right. And this is where, again, we want to have him list the market
requirements. Yes.
Which is the market requirements show up. And the other thing that shows up here, or if we think about in the value framework, this is where required capabilities show up. Mm-hmm. So, you know, in both cases, we're talking about things that GitLab does, either in market requirements speak when we think about a use case, or in the value framework, required capabilities, which are really very, very, very focused. So there's not an exhaustive list of required capabilities.
Well, and I think those,
yeah,
you're saying we introduce those there, and I agree, because I think those become very central to our consideration stage content, because that's, if I remember the value framework and that training well enough, and how sales is using that, is they're leading people to state these requirements themselves, which we can help accelerate by putting out content that uses those requirements as things you should be considering in a consideration stage.
Exactly. And so by the time they get done with awareness, we've given someone the tools to proceed. And if we know someone has consumed these different stages, we can start to get a sense as to where they're at in this sort of sequence of steps. And the other thing that's really powerful about this is anyone who's consuming the content at this level, they're probably not ready to buy.
Mm-hmm.
They're still trying to educate themselves. They're trying to learn. Here's where I think they become much more engaged with. Now we're talking about someone who's probably ready to buy. They have a different problem at consideration. The problem when they're in this consideration phase is, look, there are so many choices and options to solve this, which is the best. We're selling GitLab here. I mean, their challenge as they go into consideration, where in awareness, they're trying to understand their problem. Now, someone who's consuming the content here, they need to learn about which solutions are going to be the best ones for them to take and go forward with, right? They haven't made a selection yet. They haven't made a choice, but they are in the process of trying to refine that and nail down what their specific choice is. And so let's see, let's think about what our message would be on this one.
I mean, this is where we would start talking about platform and built-in versus integrations. Or I guess what is in this main message, it's like, yeah, I mean, I guess it's distinguishing between the value of the different products you may go evaluate.
Yeah, because I guess as I think about it right here, at this point, we need to help them understand what their choices are.
Yeah.
This is where we want to describe and educate them on their choices and which ones to consider. We're setting up, I think at some level, what we're really doing here is we're setting up a comparison. And I think what we end up as we go to the next one is this is really where we start to talk about, comparing different choices, where our comparison pages become a huge play.
Where do you see technical content? Do you see that in a consideration stage? All over. Okay.
I see technical content. Well, let me restate that. I think there's some basic technical content about the problem that may show up in awareness. I think when we talk about consideration, now we're going to start to talk about more specific things. We'll see demos here.
Yes.
So I think this is where we'll see demos. We will see proof points. I think we'll see some, and well, let me finish this. So when we get to here, when we get to this last box, really what we're trying to talk about is, I want to make them positive. GitLab. So now we want to see case studies. And based upon the Gartner study, which talked about how powerful peer reviews are, I think we would do peer review quotes. And I think there's some flexibility as to exactly where things go. I don't think there's a hard and fast science that says one thing must go in one place. If you go back to this, right, if we think about it, where should I get started solving the problem? There's so many choices. We're trying to answer those questions. Which is the best solution? Is there a best solution? It's comparison. And then over here, we're trying to, the success is getting to convincing them that this is the right solution and and we should solve this problem.
Right. And I think what we're doing here right now, like you started writing actual messages, and now we're talking about the type of content we might be able to plug in, which I think this is something that we would include in the template instead of just having like message and supporting point across the whole thing like I originally had. We would have these things in there for people to start thinking about. But when we actually do the storyboard, each one of these cells would have something written down about what we're saying. So like peer review quotes, for example, let's go find some that would be appropriate to use here and put them in here so that when people are going to create content, they don't have to go find them. We already did that. We were like, these are 5 quotes that we know work for this use case.
I mean, you take Gartner as an example, just happen to have it open. If I can get it to load, there we go. There's 143 reviews, 340 here. There's over 500 reviews. Allow that to sink in for a moment. Over 500 reviews of GitLab. We have a 4.6 average rating for enterprise agile planning tools. Incredible. Us and Atlassian, GitLab and Atlassian were the only 2 that earned the Customer's Choice Award in 2020. Crazy good stuff. Let's look at the 5-star reviews. Move faster from idea to production. Erica, I think you wrote that review, but I'm going to keep moving. Version orchestration and agile management in one tool. The software engineering services industry. Functionality beats other ALM and CI/CD tools. Very promising future. By a Scrum Master in the and you can go into this. GitLab is good for remote work. The only tool that made a developer's life easier. Best security software. Crazy, right? So these are things that we could choose to quote and choose to use. The badge is something we can also choose to use. We need to work with Colin's team about making sure that Gartner reviews the quotes we're using. But these are the kind of things. And there's also the G2 the stuff on G2 Crowd, which if you go look at, is it any good? Which Brian on my team's been working on maintaining. There's a few badges that we've earned on G2 Crowd. My finger's getting tired scrolling. But again, there's additionally quotes we can pull from there as well. So the Gartner report describes a lot about how peer reviews are really powerful. So they play off in the, these middle row of boxes. And so as we think about the storyboard of things over here, this is where we'd want to pull in peer reviews. And I think we'd want to put them into probably in both of these. You'd probably see some of them, but again, we'd flesh this out. Now, if we continue on, so first off, before we go on to the next step, someone who's consuming consideration content, how do I choose which tool? How do I evaluate different tools? They're engaging in this content. I will suggest that this person is indicating that they're trying to make a selection of a product. And as they get to the right of this, towards the end of it, we better be getting them in front of sales. These are people who should have a high propensity of being interested in a solution. People who are consuming awareness content, not so. Here, now they're trying to make a selection. They're trying to make a decision, and we need to help them with that. And this is where getting them to sales is going to make sense.
So do you see the decision purchase stage content? And sorry if I'm jumping ahead, but do you see that as mainly content we would create to give to sales and us to use, or would we be nurturing them alongside those initial conversations?
Well, I mean, a whole lot of customers buy GitLab on the web. So there's a whole lot of sales that happen without sales being involved. So I think it's yes, we would do both. Because as I see it, once someone gets to this stage of this bottom row, now they have to convince, they've made a decision. The way I've laid this out, at least in thinking about this arc, By the time they get over here to this box and to the purchase, they've decided, they haven't made the purchase yet. And that's consistent with the Gartner structure too.
Mhm.
You know, they identify, research intent, and then the last thing is they actually make the purchase. You know, and it's funny, in the Gartner study that they wrote, and you and I talked about this earlier, but I'm going to just highlight it while we talk, is the thing about this that just, it was so powerful, and I commented on it earlier, is the final purchase stage. You know, they've made the decision of which tool they want to buy, but they haven't finished the deal. They're trying to close the deal. And the reasons they don't close deals is the prices aren't in line with expectation, negative reviews, and, you know, the sales pitch or aggressive sales tactics, you know, kind of come into this. There's a couple others, but it's a powerful reminder that even though they've decided that they like your tool, they haven't closed the deal yet. And so that's where these last 3 boxes really are what these last 3 steps of the purchase phase is. Now, how do we help them overcome the obstacles inside their organization? How do they justify their decision with either their peers in other parts of the organization, or their boss, or procurement, or whoever they have to justify with? They need to do this. How do they prove that there's going to be value in this? And then how do they get started with quick wins? And so the kinds of content we would want to provide here would be content, if we go back over to this, would be, you know, it would be, the problem would be, and so that's their problem, is they've got to sell this internally. And so over here, it's help with them. And by the way, this is also the idea that we've kicked around a lot. We've talked about this for a while, is this idea of a champion. A champion has decided, I want to use this tool. How do I help do this? Tracy has done a bunch of work interviewing some people, so has Brian, about these are people who are champions who are trying to introduce GitLab into their organization. And so I think this is where we're starting to really equip them and the field with how to do this. So justification about the choice, why GitLab is the best. And over here, whoops, that should have been up higher. And over here, this is about how do I prove the value and ROI of this choice, which is key. And this is where ROI calculators, case studies become key. Whoops, I'm typing too fast. I'm not very good typing on camera. And then this closing message is really where I think the educational content of getting started fast and easy comes in, and which is where GitLab Learn.
Yes.
And so this would be the story flow. And I will suggest then anybody who's at, you know, if we were to number these boxes, you know, 1 through 9, because they're numbered on this grid. So anybody who's in the boxes 5 and above or 6 and above, better be talking to them, because they're ready to buy, or they're in the process of trying to buy. And so for me, at least, this becomes a way of saying someone who's consuming the later stage content has a much higher propensity to be purchasing stuff. And I haven't looked really closely at our scoring model, but I would suggest we should revisit and think about how do we score content based upon where they're at in the journey and propensity to buy. I think we're probably aligned to it. This, I think, gives us, from a content perspective, a way to think about the content we're writing to be aligned to that.
Yeah, I think I want to say that some work was just done or is being done to do that. What I would say with what we're doing here as it relates to like demand gen is like, let's prove this out before, and then like help them put it into the model.
Yep.
Because I think we have some work to do here with getting our like teams trained on this and actually creating content and proving out this concept. Um, we are kind of running up on time too. So I just want to like get a sense from you, like next steps. I'll let you know what I think. From the story arc information that you have and what we just went through, I think we can go back into the storyboard template and instead of where it says like main message and supporting point, give a solid instruction of like what we're looking for there, which is a lot of what you wrote in this copy storyboard. Because one of the things like I want to avoid is if we go roll this out to our teams, I don't want to get back a storyboard that says peer review quotes, case study. I want to know what that case study needs to say and what those peer review quotes are proving. But I think that it's good to include those in the template for them to look at to frame like what kind of content should I go look for to find the answer here. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, the distinction between, you know, kind of the template roughed in with the ideas of what goes there versus the fully built out. I think the next step, really, to be honest, would be, I think going into one of these and double clicking and saying, okay, let's, because what we did in this copy or this kind of this rough one that we did really on the fly here is, you know, really quickly ad hoc filling in the blanks. I think we need to now roll up our sleeves and actually do one of them.
Do you think that we should prove this out, let's say, with like DevOps platform as like our overall GitLab message, you and I, and see how that goes and document it, and then we can roll it out to our teams once we've kind of hashed it out, diving deep together?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable way to do it.
Okay, yeah, I like that because then the my fear, because I have failed at this before, is rolling out something that wasn't fully baked times 3, and for you it's like times 6 or 9 people, and then
Yeah,
we have time to find the chaos.
No, the right. If we can't do it, if you and I can't do it and figure out what one of these would look like and build it in total, then handing it off to a dozen people and saying, here, go figure this out. And oh, by the way, and it's more than a dozen people because it includes the the marketing program managers, the Jackie's team. So for us to throw this over the wall without providing the details of it, because I think what we have to do now is pilot this.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I think it could be you and me and either 1 or 2 people from our teams and pilot building this out collaboratively.
Yeah, I would want to pull in Bree since she's the one who would be rolling it out to content marketing. So that's who I would pull in from my side. And then, yeah, I think if we can.
And on my side, it would be Cormac.
Okay.
Who would be on point for this. So because we're talking about the VSDP, which is where we need to have, we need to own this. And so I think this would be the place to do it. And so how about we find time next week and let's get them engaged and collectively the 4 of us can iterate on this.
That sounds great.
All right.
Cool.
That sounds like a plan.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.